They say women love the chase. But here's the paradox. When you stop chasing her, that's when she starts wanting you. Not when you call every day, not when you beg for attention, but when you vanish quietly. Hey folks, welcome back to Behavior Insight, where we dive deep into relationships, psychology, and self-worth from a woman's perspective. Today's topic is brutally honest, but powerful. Why women only want you when you stop chasing them. And no, it's not about mind games or toxic manipulation. It's about understanding human nature, emotional timing, and the Stoic principle of self-respect. Whether you're a man trying to understand this dynamic or a woman curious why this pattern exists, stick around. You're about to see attraction through a completely different lens. Let's break this down. 1. Scarcity creates psychological value. Let's start with one of the most powerful principles in both economics and psychology. Scarcity creates value. This isn't just a dating concept. It's a universal human truth. The less available something is, the more we desire it. Think of limited edition sneakers, exclusive club memberships, or VIP concert tickets. They become more desirable not because they're objectively better, but because they're harder to access. Now translate that same principle to relationships. A man who's constantly available, always chasing, texting, calling, liking every post, his attention becomes predictable, even disposable. It doesn't carry weight, it doesn't demand appreciation, and it certainly doesn't create excitement. Women, just like men, are wired to notice and respond to what feels rare, selective, and purposeful. When a woman senses that a man's attention is always on her, regardless of her response, she doesn't have to work for it. And when someone doesn't have to work for your time or energy, they begin to value it less. It becomes something expected rather than earned, and what's expected often becomes ignored. On the flip side, when you stop chasing, when you step back and stop offering constant attention, a psychological shift occurs. That absence creates space, and that space gets filled with questions. Why isn't he reaching out? Has he lost interest? Was I taking him for granted? This isn't manipulation. This is a mirror. A moment that allows her to reflect, to feel, and to realize that your presence once held weight. The truth is, your energy is a currency. Every message, every plan, every effort you extend is a transaction. And if you're spending without return, constantly chasing, giving, and proving, you're devaluing yourself in the process. But when you protect that energy, when you become more selective about who receives it, you signal something powerful. I know my worth, and I don't give it away easily. That's where Stoicism enters the picture. A Stoic man doesn't operate from desperation. He doesn't hand out validation in hopes of being chosen. He stands grounded in his own identity, letting others come to him, not because he's cold or arrogant, but because he understands that his attention is sacred, and only those who respect it should have access to it. So if you want to understand why women often start showing more interest after you stop chasing, it's because your scarcity amplifies your value. When you stop throwing your energy into the void and start investing it back into yourself, that's when the dynamic changes. That's when they start noticing. Because your presence was never the problem, your over-availability was. Make her miss your energy, not because you're gone, but because you were always worth noticing. 2. Emotional space. Sparks interest. When someone is always present, always available, and always pouring energy into you, it can feel suffocating. Not because their intentions are wrong, but because the natural tension and curiosity that build attraction are missing. That's where the importance of emotional space comes in. And it's why pulling back often reignites a woman's interest, even when she seemed indifferent at first. Our brains are wired for stimulation. Psychologists call it the uncertainty principle. The idea that people become more emotionally invested in things that are unpredictable. Think about it. When you don't know if someone likes you, you analyze every word, every glance, every interaction. You become engaged because the outcome isn't guaranteed. When a man is always texting, always calling, always available, he removes that uncertainty. And instead of sparking interest, it dulls the experience. The pursuit is over before it even begins. There's no emotional build-up, no time for her to miss you, no room for mystery. But when you give space, authentic space, not out of manipulation but out of self-respect, something powerful happens. She begins to notice your absence. She wonders what you're doing. She starts to reflect on the connection. And in that reflection, attraction has room to grow. This isn't about pulling back just to provoke a reaction. It's about aligning with your own energy and giving the dynamic a chance to breathe. A high-value man knows he doesn't need to be in constant contact to maintain interest. He understands that space isn't rejection, it's respect. Respect for himself and for her emotional process. When you stop chasing and start allowing space, you invite her into the connection instead of forcing it. You become someone she's curious about, not because you're playing games, but because you're not afraid of silence. You're not afraid to wait. You're not afraid to let things develop naturally. And most importantly, you're not afraid to walk away if the energy isn't mutual. That kind of emotional control is magnetic. Because in a world of men trying to prove themselves, the one who's at peace with himself, who's okay with space, becomes the most intriguing of all. 3. Chasing signals insecurity. Let's be brutally honest. Chasing at its core often screams insecurity. When a man relentlessly pursues a woman who's giving minimal effort, he's not just trying to win her attention. He's revealing that he doesn't believe he can attract it without forcing it. Women pick up on this energy instantly. It's not about what you say or do. It's about what you believe about yourself while doing it. If your every move, every text, every compliment, every plan is driven by a need to gain her approval, she'll feel it. And no matter how sweet your gestures are, they'll come across as needy, not confident. Confidence isn't shown in grand romantic gestures. It's shown in your ability to walk away, to say, "I like you, but I won't beg for your time." That's self-respect. That's power. That's the masculine energy women are drawn to, but rarely find. Here's where Stoicism plays a massive role. A Stoic man doesn't attach his self-worth to whether or not a woman wants him. He offers his energy. If it's received, beautiful. If it's not, he withdraws with dignity, not out of pride, but out of principle. Chasing a woman who isn't reciprocating isn't romantic. It's a form of self-abandonment. It says, "I'll keep giving even when I'm not being valued." That's not love. That's a cry for validation. Women don't want a man who needs them to feel whole. They want a man who's whole already, who chooses her, not needs her. When you stop chasing, you stop trying to convince her of your worth. And ironically, that's when she starts to see it. You stop being the background noise in her life. You become the one who had enough self-respect to stop the performance. And that's when you shift in her mind from the guy who was always there to the man she might have underestimated. 4. The power of emotional absence. You've probably heard the phrase, "You don't know what you've got until it's gone." But let's go deeper. It's not just the absence that matters. It's the emotional weight of that absence. That's the true power. When you're constantly present in a woman's life, messaging her daily, engaging on social media, always initiating, your presence becomes expected. It fades into the background. She doesn't have to earn your energy, so she begins to overlook it. But when you step back, when you truly stop chasing, you create a void. And that void isn't empty. It's filled with everything you used to give: your attention, your emotional availability, your support, your affection. And suddenly, it's gone. That's when she starts to notice. She starts replaying the conversations, checking to see if you've viewed her story, wondering why the one man who gave her so much is no longer around. And that emotional absence becomes louder than any words you could have spoken. It's not about disappearing to get attention. It's about removing yourself from a space where you were undervalued and letting your absence speak the truth your words never could. I was here. You didn't see me. Now I'm gone. That's the silent power of a man who knows his value. He doesn't chase love where it isn't returned. He lets his absence echo the message his presence once carried. And that's when she might start chasing you. Not because you played a game, but because you stopped playing yourself. 5. The identity shift. When you stop chasing, you don't just change your behavior, you change your identity. You shift from someone orbiting her world to someone building your own, and that shift is magnetic. Suddenly, you're not texting her every morning, you're hitting the gym, you're reading more, you're diving into your purpose, you're glowing in ways she didn't notice before because you were too busy trying to get noticed. Women are naturally drawn to men who are in motion, men who are growing, evolving, creating. And when you stop centering her in your life and start centering yourself, she begins to see you in a different light. Not as the guy who's always waiting, but as the man who's becoming. This is what psychologists call self-expansion. Humans are attracted to those who expand their sense of self. We want to be close to people who are going somewhere because it makes us feel like we'll go somewhere too. So when you stop chasing her and start chasing your goals, your energy shifts, your confidence rises, your worth becomes internal. And that energy, that's what she'll feel. That's what she'll remember. That's what might make her look back and think, did I miss out? And the best part? Whether she comes back or not, you're not waiting, because the chase is no longer about her, it's about becoming someone you respect. 6. Authentic detachment is attractive. There's a massive difference between pretending not to care and truly not attaching your worth to someone else's response. That's what authentic detachment is. Not indifference, not cold-heartedness, but emotional freedom. And that freedom is wildly attractive. When a man stops chasing a woman, not as a tactic, but as a byproduct of knowing his value, it triggers something very real inside her. She begins to question what shifted, not because you're playing games, but because your energy is no longer orbiting her. And suddenly, your absence starts feeling more powerful than your presence ever did. Here's the truth most won't admit. We're drawn to people who are centered within themselves. People who don't flinch when we pull back, who don't overreact when we go quiet. Why? Because they project security. And emotional security is rare. When you detach, you're not punishing her. You're preserving yourself. You're saying, I care about you, but not more than I care about me. That boundary doesn't push women away. In fact, it often invites them closer, because now they know your love isn't desperate. It's intentional. It's important to note, detachment isn't passive aggression. It's not ghosting. It's not stonewalling. It's clarity. It's letting go of outcomes and choosing to live in your own lane, unapologetically. When a man stops chasing and starts living, really living, he radiates a kind of peace that's hard to ignore. He's no longer consumed by how she feels. He's too busy being aligned with how he feels. And ironically, that's when she'll start to feel drawn in. Not because you forced her hand, but because she finally saw what it looks like when a man values himself over attention. So no, don't fake detachment. Embody it. Live it. Make peace with the idea that not everyone will choose you. And let that truth liberate you, not break you. Because the man who doesn't need love to be fulfilled is often the one who ends up attracting the most genuine version of it. 7. Stoicism, emotional control, Kshatra's power. One of the core foundations of Stoicism and masculine energy in general is emotional control, and not the kind that represses feelings or acts numb, but the kind that allows you to respond, not react. When a man chases, especially after he's been ignored or breadcrumbed, he's reacting. He's being pulled by external circumstances. His emotions dictate his behavior, and that makes him unstable in her eyes. Women don't want a man who's emotionally volatile. They want a man who's emotionally rooted, a man who doesn't lose composure when she goes cold, who doesn't spiral when she takes a step back, who doesn't need constant reassurance to stay grounded. That's why Stoicism is so attractive, because it represents internal mastery. It's the quiet strength that says, "You don't get to decide how I feel, I do." Emotional control is sexy. It means you're not impulsively texting at midnight when you feel lonely. You're not blowing up her phone for answers. You're not performing out of fear. Instead, you're observing, reflecting, and moving based on your standards, not your emotions. This kind of man is rare, and because he's rare, he's respected, especially by women who are used to emotional chaos. And when you do feel emotion, because you're still human, you handle it with discipline. You journal, you train, you seek wisdom, you elevate. The irony is, when you don't need her to validate you, she's far more likely to want you. Because now, you've shown her that her love isn't a lifeline, it's an addition. And that's when you shift in her mind. You go from being the man who chased her to the man she can't quite figure out. Not because you're hiding, but because you've mastered yourself. And in a world full of men chasing external approval, the one who's built his own peace becomes irresistible. 8. In the end, it's not about her. It's about you. Here's the part that flips the script completely. The chase was never about her. It was always about you. Your need to chase. It wasn't really for her validation. It was a reflection of your internal doubt, your fear of not being chosen, your lack of self-anchoring. And when you stop chasing, it's not just her you're letting go of. It's the version of yourself that believed you weren't enough unless someone else said so. This is the ultimate Stoic realization, that your peace, your power, your worth, it never came from her response. It was always yours to begin with, you just forgot. So when you finally stop chasing her, you're not just stepping back from a woman, you're stepping back into yourself. You're rebuilding, refocusing. You're aligning your time, energy, and attention toward what truly matters, your growth, your values, your vision. And when that happens, something amazing shifts. Women start noticing. People respect you more. Opportunities come. Not because you're chasing them, but because you've become the kind of person that attracts them. If she comes back, great. But if not, even better. Because you're no longer chasing a woman to complete you. You've already chosen the most important person, you. This is the silent transformation that makes her say, he's not who he used to be. And you'll smile, not out of spite, but because she's right. You're not. You've evolved. And now, she's the one left wondering what it feels like to be chased by a man who no longer needs to chase at all. If this message hit home for you, drop a comment below. I choose peace over pursuit. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Follow Behavior Insight for more Stoicism-inspired relationship truths and feminine insights delivered with love and clarity. Remember, high-value love doesn't chase, it invites, it attracts, it flows. See you in the next one.